wearing the cross of Father Nikolai Martsyshevsky. He was one among many priests who were ordained during the Soviet regime by the Moscow Patriarchate, and they were accepted into the church abroad as priests. Nobody said that the church was graceless. They said the church was suffering, the church was under duress and everything. There were very few clerics that demanded the understanding that the church in Russia, the official Moscow Patriarchate Church, completely graceless. There were a number of clergy like that. Father Nikolai Masich, who was the priest here in Burlingame, he was one of these priests, you know. Father Alexei Ionov was a priest here in this parish. In fact, there was a Russian movie called Pop, and supposedly it was about his life in Russia and occupied by the German army, Russia. End of the story in the movie does not show the true end of Father Alexei's later life, because he was a priest here and he died here and not returned to Russia. But these were the clergy. They certainly didn't say that the Moscow Patriarchate was graceless. Their priesthood was from it. My first visit to Russia was in 2002. It was already after the Russian Orthodox Church abroad blessed clergy to be in connection with Moscow Patriarch clergy. Before, it was against the rules of the church abroad to even have casual discussions with clergy from the Moscow Patriarchate. Travel to Russia was not allowed, although some people did. I don't want to name anybody now, but Russia, I could have gone to Russia. My own personal means to go to Russia. First time I went was in the year 2002, and as things would happen, I actually got lost after getting off a subway, and I didn't know which way was the exact way to where I was supposed to be. And I got out, and then I realized I don't even have the address of where I'm supposed to go. So then I started walking around, and I walked into churches, a couple of churches, and the services were taking place, and there were mothers there with children doing prostrations to the ground. And the thing is this, that if we as a group later in 2007 or whenever, 2006, whenever we went, if we were being shown Potemkin's villages, I wasn't being shown anything because I randomly ended up in one or another church and saw what I saw. So this is one of the other things that touched my heart. I didn't see a show-off church. I saw a real parish church within the city.
One book that comes to mind is Father Arsenii. For those of you that don't know it, it's a pretty well-known book that documents how Father Arsenii had lived through the Gulag and then, had a secret church in a home that was like in a closet. Everything that you're saying just reminds me of that book. I wish that a lot of these people who are up in arms, slandering, read that book.
Father Arsenii, former scholar of church art, became prisoner number 18376 in the brutal special sector of the Soviet prison camp. In the darkness of systematic degradation of body and soul, he shone with the light of Christ's peace and compassion, his sights set on God and his life grounded in the church. Father Arsenii lived by the injunction to bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. This narrative, compiled from the accounts of Father Arsenii's spiritual children and others whom he brought to God, gives stirring glimpses of his life in prison camp and after his release. It also tells the stories of people whose lives, often during times of almost unimaginable crisis, were touched and transfigured through their connection with Father Arsenii. It is also available on Audible for those of you who like to listen to audiobooks.
The Kursk Root Icon of the Mother of God revealed herself over 700 years ago, discovered by a hunter in the woods of the Kursk area. And when he picked up this fairly small icon, a spring of water came out of the ground. Eventually, a monastery was built around the area where the Kursk icon was discovered. In Russia, for centuries, the Kursk icon would be taken from the monastery where it was discovered to the city and cathedral in Kursk, and that was one of the great processions of the cross that took place in Russia. When the Civil War and Revolution took place, the icon was taken out of Russia because many holy things were being destroyed by the godless Bolsheviks, and so it became part of the community of Russian people that had fled their homeland and became the champion leader of Russian people outside of Russia. For instance, Archbishop Averki, as a hieromonk, would go through the streets of Belgrade while it was being bombed and bless the homes of the Orthodox people. Some of the homes where the icon had visited were spared, and there was even a miracle where an elderly lady was not able to go down to a bomb shelter and remained in the icon corner on the third floor of a building, and her granddaughter also refused to leave her grandmother alone, and they were praying in the icon corner, and a bomb hit the house directly, with everything crashing down around except for the corner of the house where the icon corner was, where the Kursk icon had been just previously to that. We had a miracle of the Kursk icon in our own home when my father was deathly ill, and my mother pleaded to have the icon brought to his deathbed, and the priest who carried the icon put the icon on my father's chest and did the church service. I was a kid. My father should not suffer anymore, and that if he could die so he wouldn't suffer, I would accept that. And I started crying, and I couldn't say the end of the service. But the priest continued, and the service was done. And the next day, there was a Catholic doctor, a Jewish doctor, and an atheist doctor. And they all witnessed to the fact that when they opened my father, they saw his innards as brand new. So my father survived for very many years after that. It's true, I was blessed to go with Father Vladimir from New Zealand, Father Nicholas, the proto-deacon, and Father Vladimir, and we were in the area of Yekaterinburg, and we were to leave after being there for a number of days, and we drove off. And as we drove off, we went past one gas station and a little store, and a second gas station and a little store. And then we just arbitrarily stayed at one. We were there in our car, the icon was there. And I went into the store, and I sort of marveled at the fact that it was just like any highway store with goodies and coffee and everything. And I started joking around with the people who were there. And then Father Vladimir came in, and he said, "We have the Kursk Root Icon with us in the car, and if you want, you can go now venerate it." Customers in the store and workers in the store all lined up to venerate the holy icon, and there was one particular person who was standing not too far away, and she was just trembling and crying. And finally she came up, she crossed herself and kissed the icon and walked off. And Father Vladimir asked her, he said, "Why are you so emotional and touched?" And she said, "You cannot believe this. I knew that the icon was going to be in Ekaterinburg, and I made every effort to visit. And I needed to visit because I have a sick boy. I have a little boy who's very ill. And I needed to cry my tears in front of the icon when it was in the city. But then I was told that the icon was leaving and I could not make it. Just all kinds of obstacles popped up that made it impossible for me to come. And I thought I will never be able to venerate the icon. It'll be gone forever. And here, not only did I venerate it, but it seemed like the icon had come to me. And that was very deeply touching, very deeply touching.